The village of Eldermoor had always been small, tucked between jagged cliffs and a dense forest that locals whispered was alive. It was a place of routine and superstition, where people rose with the sun, prayed to gods whose names they barely remembered, and trusted nothing beyond the walls of their humble homes. Yet for generations, the elders had spoken of a prophecy, one that came to life only once in a century. The blood moon. Its coming was said to be marked by red light across the sky, casting shadows deeper than night itself, and those shadows brought disappearance, silence, and fear. No one in Eldermoor truly believed it anymore. Some thought it a tale to scare children, others dismissed it as the folly of old minds clinging to stories. But then the month of the blood moon arrived, and with it, a strange unease settled over the village. Animals shied away from paths they once walked freely. Wells seemed to whisper when villagers drew water. Even the wind carried a strange note, like a low hum warning of a calamity that could not be named. On the eve of the blood moon, the villagers gathered for a feast. Candles flickered against stone walls, and laughter echoed in the common hall. But beneath the surface, tension pulsed. The blacksmith refused to hammer, claiming the iron would hear the moon's voice. Children slept restlessly, tugging at their mothers' skirts in half-waking panic, and the elders sat in silence, their eyes reflecting the crimson glow that had begun to rise in the east. Among the villagers, a young girl named Amara felt it most. Her dreams had been restless for nights. She saw herself wandering a village of shadows, calling out names she did not know, and yet they answered her, but only as echoes. She awoke, sweating and gasping, the cries of unseen mouths still in her ears. As midnight approached, the blood moon rose. It was a perfect sphere of red, glowing with a light that seemed to seep into every stone and wooden beam. Windows reflected a color that no one could have imagined, and shadows moved unnaturally. It was then that the first sign came, a silence, sudden and complete, as though the village itself had taken a deep, trembling breath. Dogs stopped barking. The river slowed its murmur. Even the fire seemed to hold its warmth uncertainly. Then the villagers noticed that the edges of the forest were shifting. Figures moved within the trees, but when anyone tried to look directly, the shadows melted away. A low chant began, carried on the wind, but with no mouth to speak it. Panic took hold. People ran to doors, windows, to each other, but it was no use. The air itself seemed to thicken, as if it were swallowing the sounds, the cries, the very presence of those who remained. Amara ran through the streets, clutching her little brother's hand. Their neighbors had vanished. Houses stood empty, doors swinging on their hinges, smoke rising from hearths where no fire remained. Livestock wandered like lost souls. It was not death that had come, she realized. It was erasure. The village had not been killed, it had been removed. She reached the chapel, where the priest usually rang the bell in prayer. It hung silent, and inside, the altar was empty. Candles were lit, but no flame danced. Shadows pooled unnaturally in corners, moving slowly, deliberately. And then she saw it, a figure at the pulpit, cloaked in shadow, its face obscured, chanting in a voice that was all around her and nowhere. It spoke her name and then vanished, leaving her hollow. Amara ran toward the forest, hoping to escape the red light, but the trees were not what they had been. The paths twisted unnaturally. The forest hummed and throbbed, as if it were breathing with intent. Every tree seemed taller, closer, more alive, until it felt like the wood itself was guiding her, corralling her. Hours, or perhaps minutes later, time had ceased to make sense. She found herself at the cliff's edge, staring at the village below, and yet it was gone. Not a trace remained. The stone paths, the cottages, the smoke, the firelight, the laughter, all had vanished. Only the earth, scorched and strangely silent, remained. She felt the moon above her pulse, and in its light, she understood the prophecy. It was not meant to warn, but to claim. Alone, trembling, Amara fell to her knees. She felt the weight of the vanished neighbors, friends, her family pressing into her bones. She was alive, yes, but only because she had not been part of the ritual the blood moon demanded. The prophecy had taken the village to a place she could not see, leaving only her witness to the horror. The blood moon faded with the coming dawn, leaving the sky washed in normal silver light. But the world had changed. No birds sang. No wind carried life. The village of Eldermoor had been excised from reality, and Amara, the sole survivor, realized that survival was no gift. It was a curse, a warning, a burden. She would wander, haunted by echoes, knowing the place she called home had ceased to exist, not in death, but in the unnatural silence of the prophecy fulfilled. Even centuries later, travelers spoke of a crimson moon rising above the cliffs, and of a lone girl wandering the edges of a vanished village. Her eyes, hollow yet alive, seemed to carry the memory of 1,000 souls, and her voice, if one dared to hear it, whispered the prophecy still. The blood moon comes, and it takes